Theodore Bennett stood alone in his glass tower, 45 floors above the bustling city, watching families walk hand in hand on the sidewalks below. His reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows. Empty eyes, expensive suit, and a heart that hadn't felt genuine warmth in exactly 1,000 days. Not since the car accident that took his parents. Not since he built walls so high that love couldn't climb over them. The richest man in America ate breakfast alone. Celebrated business victories alone. Went to sleep in his 12-bedroom mansion alone. His bank account grew by millions each day, but his soul grew emptier with each sunset. Today, like every day for the past 3 years, no one would hug him. No one would ask how his day went. No one would laugh at his jokes or cry at his struggles. Theodore owned everything money could buy, but he couldn't purchase the one thing he desperately needed: genuine human connection. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to have everything money can buy but no one to share it with? Don't forget to subscribe and tell us in the comments. When was the last time you truly appreciated a simple hug from someone you love? Theodore Bennett pressed his palm against the cold glass of his office window, 45 stories above Manhattan's busy streets. Below, people rushed past like tiny ants, each carrying their own stories, their own families, their own reasons to smile. He envied every single one of them. His Rolex showed 7:30 a.m., but Theodore had been awake since 4 o'clock. Sleep came in short bursts these days, interrupted by dreams of his parents and memories of better times. 3 years, 2 months and 15 days had passed since the accident. 3 years since he had felt truly connected to another human being. "Mr. Bennett," came a gentle voice from behind him. Mrs. Patterson, his secretary of 20 years, entered with his morning coffee. She was the closest thing to family he had left, though even she maintained professional distance. "The candidates for the personal assistant position will arrive at 9. Theodore nodded without turning around. This was his 7th attempt to hire someone. The previous 6 had lasted less than a month each. They came with bright smiles and ambitious dreams, but all they saw were dollar signs. None of them cared about Theodore the person. They wanted Theodore the bank account. "How many today?" he asked, his breath fogging the glass. 4 interviews scheduled. The applications were quite diverse this time. Mrs. Patterson set his coffee on the mahogany desk. "Perhaps one of them will be what you're looking for." What was he looking for? Theodore wasn't even sure anymore. Someone genuine, maybe. Someone who would see past the designer suits and expensive watches. Someone who would care if he lived or died for reasons that had nothing to do with inheritance. His parents had been the last people to love him unconditionally. Margaret and James Bennett had built this company from nothing, teaching Theodore that success meant more than profit margins. They believed in kindness, in helping others, in using wealth as a tool for good. When they died in that rainy night collision, Theodore's world collapsed inward like a black hole, consuming everything warm and bright. He walked to his desk, past the awards and accolades that lined the walls. CEO of the Year. Humanitarian of the Decade. Philanthropist of the Century. All meaningless titles when you ate dinner alone every night. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man praised for helping millions couldn't help himself find a single genuine friend. Theodore's morning routine never varied. Check overnight emails from international offices. Review quarterly projections. Approve charitable donations through the Bennett Foundation. Today, like every day, he would give away more money than most people earned in a lifetime. Yet generosity had become mechanical, distant, performed out of duty rather than joy. The coffee tasted bitter, but everything tasted bitter these days. Food had lost its flavor when he stopped sharing meals. Music sounded hollow when no one danced with him. Even his achievements felt empty when no one celebrated beside him. His reflection in the computer screen showed a man who looked older than his 45 years. Stress lines around his green eyes. Salt and pepper beard that had grown scruffier lately. His mother would have told him to shave properly and stand straighter. His father would have reminded him that money was just paper without people to share it with. "Sir," Mrs. Patterson's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your first appointment is here early. A Ms. Gabrielle Washington." Theodore straightened his tie and composed his business face. The mask he wore for everyone now. Professional. Distant. Safe. He had learned that keeping people at arm's length prevented the pain of losing them later. Better to be alone by choice than abandoned by chance. Send her in. He turned toward the door, preparing for another disappointment. Another person who would smile too brightly, shake his hand too firmly, and promise to make his life easier while secretly calculating how much they could gain from his loneliness. Theodore Bennett, the loneliest billionaire in America, was about to meet the 2 people who would change his life forever. But he didn't know it yet. All he knew was that another morning had begun, empty and cold, just like the 1,000 mornings before it. The door handle turned and Theodore held his breath, hoping against hope that today might be different. Gabrielle Washington stared at her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror of her small apartment. Her interview outfit, a navy blue dress from the thrift store, looked professional enough after careful pressing with her old iron. She had spent her last $20 on getting her hair done at the beauty school down the street. This job interview at Bennett Industries wasn't just an opportunity. It was her lifeline. "Mommy, you look pretty," Amara said from the doorway, clutching her worn teddy bear. At 8 years old, Amara had her mother's bright smile and infectious optimism, despite their struggles. "Thank you, baby girl." Gabrielle knelt down to hug her daughter. "Mrs. Rodriguez from next door will watch you while I go to this interview. Can't I come with you?" Amara's dark eyes sparkled with curiosity. "I promise I'll be good. I won't touch anything or talk too loud." Gabrielle hesitated. Bringing a child to a job interview was unprofessional, but Mrs. Rodriguez had called in sick with the flu. The babysitter she sometimes used was working her own job. Gabrielle's mother lived 3 states away, and Amara's father had disappeared before her 2nd birthday. It was just the 2 of them against the world like always. "Sweetheart, this is a very important meeting. The man I'm going to see runs a big company, and he needs someone to help him with his work." "Is he nice?" Amara asked with the directness that only children possessed. Gabrielle paused. She had researched Theodore Bennett online, finding mostly business articles and charity announcements. Photos showed a serious man with kind eyes who rarely smiled for cameras. Forbes called him a reclusive genius. The Wall Street Journal described him as philanthropic but private. None of the articles mentioned family or personal relationships. "I don't know yet, baby. But I hope so." The truth was, Gabrielle was desperate. Working double shifts at Murphy's Diner brought in barely enough to cover rent, groceries, and Amara's school supplies. The apartment's heater hadn't worked properly all winter. The car made strange noises that probably meant expensive repairs she couldn't afford. When she saw the posting for a personal assistant position at Bennett Industries, with a salary that seemed too good to be true, she applied immediately. The job requirements were unusual. Instead of demanding years of experience or advanced degrees, the posting emphasized qualities like empathy, integrity, and genuine care for others' well-being. It sounded less like a typical corporate position and more like someone searching for a friend. "Mommy, your phone is ringing," Amara pointed to the kitchen counter. Gabrielle rushed to answer, hoping it wasn't the company calling to cancel. "Hello? Ms. Washington? This is Mrs. Patterson from Bennett Industries. I'm calling to confirm your 9 o'clock interview today." "Yes, I'll be there. Thank you for calling." "Wonderful. Just so you know, Mr. Bennett appreciates punctuality and honesty above all else. He's interviewed many candidates recently, and he's looking for someone genuinely interested in helping rather than just working." After hanging up, Gabrielle felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. The secretary's words suggested that Theodore Bennett was searching for something specific. Something that went deeper than typical professional skills. "Amara, put on your blue dress. You're coming with me." Her daughter's face lit up. "Really? Can I bring my coloring book?" "Yes, but remember what I said about being quiet and good." They took 2 buses to reach the gleaming Bennett Industries building in downtown Manhattan. Gabrielle had never seen anything so magnificent. The glass structure reached toward the clouds like a crystal mountain, reflecting the morning sun in brilliant patterns. Security guards in crisp uniforms nodded politely as they entered the marble lobby. Amara's eyes widened as she took in the soaring ceilings, elegant fountains, and walls lined with awards and photographs. "Mommy, is this like a castle?" "Something like that," Gabrielle whispered back, feeling incredibly small in such grandeur. The elevator ride to the 45th floor felt like ascending to heaven. Amara pressed her nose against the glass, watching the city shrink below them. Gabrielle's stomach churned with nervous energy. What was she thinking? She was a high school graduate who served coffee and eggs for a living. What could she possibly offer to a man who owned buildings like this? But then she remembered why she was here. Not for herself, but for Amara. For the chance to give her daughter opportunities that Gabrielle never had. For the possibility of a stable life where they didn't worry about every penny. The elevator doors opened to reveal an elegant reception area. Mrs. Patterson, a kind-looking woman in her 60s, greeted them warmly despite raising an eyebrow at Amara's presence. "Ms. Washington, I presume? And who is this lovely young lady?" "This is my daughter, Amara. I'm so sorry to bring her. My babysitter fell through at the last minute." Mrs. Patterson smiled genuinely. Don't apologize. Mr. Bennett appreciates honesty, remember? Please have a seat. He'll be with you shortly. As they waited, Gabrielle watched other candidates come and go. A woman in an expensive suit who barely lasted 10 minutes. A man with multiple phones who seemed more interested in his stock portfolio than the interview. Each one emerged looking disappointed or frustrated. Mommy, Amara whispered, why does everyone look sad when they come out? That was exactly what Gabrielle was wondering. And in just a few minutes she would find out. The heavy oak doors to Theodore Bennett's office opened with barely a whisper. Gabrielle took a deep breath and walked in, holding Amara's hand tightly. The office was bigger than their entire apartment, with windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. Behind a massive desk sat a man who looked both powerful and tired. Theodore Bennett rose from his chair, and Gabrielle was struck by how tall he was. At least 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his perfectly tailored gray suit. His green eyes were intelligent but guarded, and his handshake was firm yet gentle. Ms. Washington, I presume. And this must be your daughter. Yes, sir. I apologize for bringing her. My childcare arrangements fell through at the last minute. Gabrielle felt heat rising in her cheeks. This was already going wrong. Please sit. Theodore gestured to the leather chairs across from his desk. His voice was deep and measured but not unkind. Would your daughter like something to color with? Mrs. Patterson keeps supplies for visiting children. Gabrielle blinked in surprise. You have children visit often? Not often enough, Theodore replied quietly, and something in his tone suggested there was more to that statement. Mrs. Patterson appeared with a box of crayons and coloring books, setting them on a small table near the windows. Amara looked to her mother for permission, then moved to the table with her characteristic bounce. Within moments she was absorbed in coloring a butterfly, her legs swinging from the chair. Now then, Theodore returned to his seat, tell me why you want this position. Gabrielle had rehearsed this answer dozens of times, but sitting across from Theodore Bennett, all her prepared speeches vanished. His eyes weren't cold or calculating like she had expected. They were lonely. Mr. Bennett, I'm not going to pretend I have fancy degrees or years of corporate experience. I work at Murphy's Diner and I'm raising my daughter alone. But I applied for this job because your posting talked about empathy and genuine care. Those are things I understand. Theodore leaned back in his chair, studying her face. Go on. I've read about your company and your charitable work. You help a lot of people, but I can't help wondering, who helps you? The words tumbled out before Gabrielle could stop them. She immediately regretted being so forward. But instead of anger, something flickered across Theodore's face. Surprise maybe. Or recognition. That's an interesting question. What makes you think I need help? Gabrielle glanced around the pristine office. No family photos. No personal touches. Just awards and business documents. This office is beautiful, but it feels empty. Like a museum instead of a place where someone lives their life. Theodore was quiet for a long moment. The only sound was Amara's humming as she colored. Finally he spoke. The previous candidates were very interested in the salary and benefits package. What interests you most about this position? Honestly? The part about genuine care for others' well-being. That's not usually in job descriptions. It tells me you're looking for more than just someone to answer phones and schedule meetings. Maybe you're looking for someone who actually cares about your well-being too. And do you? Care about the well-being of people you don't know? Gabrielle thought about all the regular customers at the diner whose orders she remembered, whose problems she listened to, whose bad days she tried to brighten with an extra smile or a free slice of pie. I think caring about others is what makes us human. Whether I know them or not. Theodore's expression softened slightly. He looked over at Amara, who was completely absorbed in her artwork, occasionally making soft sound effects as she colored. Your daughter seems very well behaved. She's the best thing in my life. Everything I do is for her. Gabrielle's voice carried absolute conviction. What happened to her father? He decided fatherhood wasn't for him when Amara was 18 months old. Left one morning and never came back. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off without someone who didn't want to be there. Amara deserves people who choose to love her, not people who feel trapped by her. Theodore nodded slowly. What would you do if I offered you this position right now with a salary of $200,000 a year? Gabrielle's breath caught. That was more money than she had ever imagined earning. But something in Theodore's tone suggested this was a test. I'd ask what the catch was. Nobody pays that much for kindness alone. There has to be more to it. Smart answer. Most of the other candidates just started talking about what they would buy with the money. "Mr. Bennett, may I ask you something?" He nodded. "When was the last time someone asked how you were doing and actually wanted to hear the real answer?" Theodore's composed facade cracked just slightly. His hands, which had been folded calmly on his desk, tensed. He looked out the window at the city below, and for a moment, Gabrielle saw past the billionaire exterior to the man underneath. The lonely, tired man who had built walls so high that no one could climb over them. "That's a very personal question, Ms. Washington." Sometimes personal questions are the most important ones. Before Theodore could respond, Amara looked up from her coloring. "Mommy, why does the nice man look sad?" Both adults turned toward the 8-year-old, who was studying Theodore with the unfiltered perception that only children possessed. Her innocent question hung in the air like morning mist, delicate but impossible to ignore. And in that moment, everything changed. Theodore Bennett had faced boardrooms full of aggressive investors, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and given speeches to thousands of people. But 8-year-old Amara Washington's simple question hit him harder than any corporate challenge ever had. "Why does the nice man look sad?" Amara had put down her crayons and was looking directly at Theodore with genuine concern. Her dark eyes held no agenda, no calculation, no desire for anything other than understanding. It was the purest form of human empathy Theodore had encountered in years. Gabrielle started to gently correct her daughter. "Amara, that's not polite to ask." "It's all right," Theodore said quietly, his voice rougher than usual. He looked at Amara, this small person who had seen through his carefully constructed professional mask in a matter of minutes. "She's just being honest." Amara slipped down from her chair and walked over to Theodore's desk. She was small for her age, with pigtails held by bright red ribbons that matched her dress. Everything about her radiated warmth and light. "My mommy looks sad sometimes too," Amara said conversationally as if discussing the weather. "Usually when she thinks I'm not watching. But hugs help sad people feel better. Do you need a hug?" Theodore's breath caught in his throat. When was the last time someone had offered him physical comfort? When was the last time anyone had touched him with kindness rather than obligation? His parents' funeral, perhaps. 3 years, 2 months, and 15 days ago. "Amara," Gabrielle said softly, standing up. "Mr. Bennett is working. We shouldn't interrupt." But Theodore held up his hand. His eyes were fixed on Amara's face, seeing something there that he had forgotten existed. Unconditional compassion. Love without strings attached. The kind of pure kindness that expected nothing in return. Theodore's voice cracked slightly. "I haven't had a hug in a very long time." Amara nodded solemnly as if this made perfect sense. "That's probably why you look sad. People need hugs like plants need water." Before either adult could react, Amara walked around the massive desk and stood beside Theodore's chair. She opened her arms wide, waiting patiently for permission. Theodore looked at Gabrielle, who was watching with amazement and concern. "Is it okay?" he asked quietly. "Of course," Gabrielle whispered. Theodore turned in his chair and leaned down. Amara wrapped her small arms around his neck and hugged him with the fierce intensity that only children could manage. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. Her tiny hands patted his back gently. "It's okay to be sad," Amara whispered in his ear. "But you don't have to be sad alone anymore." That was when Theodore Bennett, the man who controlled a business empire worth billions, completely broke down. 3 years of suppressed grief, loneliness, and pain came pouring out in silent sobs that shook his entire body. He held on to Amara like she was a life preserver in a stormy ocean, this little girl who had offered him the one thing money couldn't buy. Gabrielle watched with tears in her own eyes as her daughter performed a miracle. She had never seen a grown man cry like that with such raw vulnerability. It wasn't weakness. It was healing. Amara didn't pull away or seem frightened by Theodore's tears. She just held him tighter and continued patting his back. "Shoo," she whispered, the same sound Gabrielle made when Amara had nightmares. "It's okay. You're okay now." After several minutes, Theodore's sobs quieted. He pulled back slowly, his face streaked with tears, and looked at Amara with wonder. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're welcome. Do you feel a little bit better?" Theodore nodded, unable to trust his voice yet. Amara smiled, the radiant smile that lit up every room she entered. "Good. My mommy gives the best hugs in the world, but I'm pretty good at them too." "You are," Theodore agreed, his voice hoarse. "You really are." Gabrielle approached quietly, placing a gentle hand on Theodore's shoulder. "Are you all right?" Theodore looked up at her, this woman who had brought light into his dark world without even trying. Her touch was warm and comforting, just like her daughter's hug. "I haven't cried in 3 years," he admitted. "I thought I had forgotten how." "Sometimes crying is good," Amara said wisely. "It washes the sadness out so happiness can come back in." Theodore laughed through his tears, a sound that surprised him with its rusty quality. "Where did you learn to be so wise?" "My mommy taught me. She says kindness is the most important thing in the whole world." Theodore looked at Gabrielle with new understanding. This woman hadn't just raised a child. She had raised a little angel who saw straight into people's hearts and loved them anyway. "Ms. Washington," Theodore said, standing up and straightening his tie, "I'd like to offer you the position. Starting salary is $300,000 a year, with full benefits for you and Amara." Gabrielle's eyes widened. "Sir, that's very generous, but I haven't even told you about my qualifications. Your daughter just gave me the most valuable gift anyone has offered me in years. That tells me everything I need to know about your qualifications." Theodore smiled, and it was the first genuine smile he had worn in 1,000 days. "Besides, I have a feeling you and Amara are going to teach me far more than I could ever teach you." Amara clapped her hands together. "Does this mean we get to visit you again?" "I hope so," Theodore said, kneeling down to her level. "I hope so very much." And for the first time in 3 years, Theodore Bennett felt something he thought he had lost forever: hope for the future. Theodore Bennett had made thousands of business decisions in his career, but none had ever felt as important as this moment. He watched Gabrielle's face cycle through shock, disbelief, and overwhelming emotion as his offer sank in. $300,000? Gabrielle repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Bennett, I don't understand. You barely know me. I know that you raised a daughter who saw a stranger's pain and wanted to heal it. I know that you asked about my well-being instead of your salary. I know that you brought honesty and kindness into a room where most people bring greed and ambition." Theodore's voice was steady now, more confident than it had been all morning. "Those aren't skills you learn in business school. They're qualities you either have or you don't." Amara tugged on her mother's dress. "Mommy, are you going to work for the nice man now?" Gabrielle knelt down to her daughter's level, her hands shaking slightly. "Sweetheart, Mr. Bennett has offered Mommy a very good job. But I need to make sure we understand everything first." Theodore appreciated her caution. Every other candidate had jumped at his offers without asking questions. "Please sit down. Let me explain what this position would involve." They returned to their chairs, Amara climbing into her mother's lap this time. Theodore felt a pang of longing watching their easy affection. When had he last held someone like that? When had anyone last held him? "The salary I mentioned is just the beginning," Theodore continued. "The position comes with full health insurance, dental, vision, and a retirement plan. There's also a housing allowance of $50,000 per year." Gabrielle's breath caught. "Housing allowance? I own several properties in the city. Safe neighborhoods, good schools. You and Amara would have your choice of apartments, fully furnished." Theodore paused, watching her reaction. "I also set up education accounts for employees' children. Amara's college would be completely covered, whatever school she chooses." "Mr. Bennett," Gabrielle's voice was thick with emotion, "this is incredibly generous, but I have to ask, why? What aren't you telling me?" Theodore stood and walked to the window again, looking down at the busy street. "Ms. Washington, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This isn't just about hiring an assistant. I'm looking for something more." "What do you mean?" He turned back to face them. "I mean that I've been alone for 3 years. I built this company, accumulated more wealth than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and donated millions to charity. But I go home every night to an empty house. I eat dinner alone. I haven't had a real conversation with anyone in months." "What happened 3 years ago?" Gabrielle asked gently. "My parents died in a car accident. They were my closest friends, my advisors, my family. After they were gone, I discovered that most of the people in my life were only there for my money. So I pushed everyone away before they could disappoint me." Amara listened intently, her young face serious. "That's very sad." "Yes, it is," Theodore agreed. "But today, for the first time in 1,000 days, someone hugged me without wanting anything in return. Your daughter gave me hope that maybe genuine people still exist in the world." "So you're not just hiring me to be your assistant," Gabrielle said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I'm hiring you to help me remember how to be human again. To bring warmth into my cold world. To maybe become the friend I've forgotten how to be." Gabrielle was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. Finally she spoke. Mr. Bennett, I'm honored by your trust. And I accept your offer with deep gratitude. Just like that. Theodore felt surprised relief wash over him. Just like that. You're offering my daughter and me a chance at a better life. You're being honest about your needs, and you're willing to be generous beyond anything we could have imagined. Only a fool would refuse such kindness. Theodore smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. Then you'll start Monday? We'll start Monday, Gabrielle corrected, glancing at Amara. Because something tells me my daughter is going to be part of this arrangement too. Can I bring my coloring books? Amara asked hopefully. You can bring whatever makes you happy, Theodore promised. This office has been too quiet for too long. Gabrielle stood and extended her hand. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. You won't regret this. Theodore shook her hand, but the gesture felt too formal after everything they had shared. Instead, he found himself asking, would it be appropriate if I hugged you both goodbye? Amara jumped up immediately, but Gabrielle hesitated for just a moment. Are you sure that's what you want? I'm sure, Theodore said quietly. I'd forgotten what it felt like to want human connection. I don't want to forget again. Gabrielle stepped forward and embraced him gently. Her hug was different from Amara's, warmer and more complex. It carried the weight of understanding, the promise of friendship, and something else Theodore couldn't quite identify yet. When they separated, Amara raised her arms expectantly. Theodore scooped her up and she hugged his neck tightly. I'm glad you won't be sad anymore, she whispered. Me too, Theodore whispered back. Me too. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Patterson appeared with paperwork and building access cards. Welcome to Bennett Industries, she said warmly to Gabrielle. I have a feeling you're exactly what this place has been missing. After they left, Theodore stood alone in his office again. But this time the silence didn't feel oppressive. It felt expectant, like the pause before a symphony begins. For the first time in 1,000 days, Theodore Bennett was looking forward to tomorrow. Monday morning arrived with spring sunshine streaming through the windows of Bennett Industries. Theodore had been at his office since 6 a.m., nervous energy keeping him awake most of the night. He had rearranged his desk 3 times, made sure fresh flowers were placed around the office, and even had Mrs. Patterson stock the small refrigerator with juice boxes and healthy snacks. At exactly 9 a.m., the elevator doors opened to reveal Gabrielle and Amara. Gabrielle wore a professional burgundy blazer that complemented her warm brown skin, while Amara carried a small backpack decorated with rainbow butterflies. Good morning, Theodore said, standing to greet them. He felt oddly shy, like a teenager on his first day at a new school. Good morning, Mr. Bennett, Gabrielle replied with a warm smile. I hope we're not too early. Please call me Theodore. And you're perfect on time. He turned to Amara, who was examining the office with fresh eyes. How are you today, Amara? I'm excellent, she announced, using a word that made both adults smile. I brought you something. From her backpack, Amara pulled out a carefully folded piece of paper. When Theodore opened it, he found a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures standing in front of a tall building. One figure wore a suit and tie, another wore a dress, and the smallest one had pigtails. That's you, me, and Mommy at your work, Amara explained proudly. We all look happy. Theodore felt his throat tighten with emotion. This is beautiful. May I hang it on my wall? Really? You want to put my picture up? It would be an honor. As Theodore carefully taped the drawing to the wall behind his desk, Gabrielle watched with amazement. The cold, sterile office was already beginning to feel more human. So, Gabrielle said, settling into the chair across from his desk, what would you like me to start with today? Theodore had prepared a list of tasks, but suddenly they all seemed less important than simply talking. Actually, I was hoping we could just get to know each other better. I realize I hired you without really explaining what a typical day looks like. Because there is no typical day? Gabrielle guessed. Exactly. I've had assistants before, but they were all about efficiency and scheduling. What I really need is someone who can help me reconnect with the world outside these walls. Amara had found the art supplies Mrs. Patterson had left for her and was setting up at the small table by the windows. Mommy, can I draw the view? Of course, baby. Theodore watched Amara arrange her crayons in rainbow order, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. She's remarkably mature for 8 years old. She's had to be, Gabrielle said quietly. When it's just the two of you, kids grow up faster. But I've tried to keep her childhood intact as much as possible. What does she like to do for fun? She loves art, obviously. Reading, dancing, helping me cook. She's fascinated by butterflies and wants to visit a butterfly garden someday. Gabrielle paused. Simple things really. We've never had money for expensive activities. Theodore made a mental note about the butterfly garden. What about you? What do you enjoy? I don't remember the last time someone asked me that. Gabrielle laughed softly. I used to love photography. Haven't touched a camera in years though. And I enjoy cooking when I have time and ingredients to work with. There's something soothing about creating something nourishing for people you care about. Do you miss it? Photography? Every day. But cameras and lenses cost money we never had for extras. Theodore was quiet for a moment, then stood and walked to a cabinet in the corner of his office. He returned with a professional camera and several lenses. This belonged to my mother, he said, setting it gently on the desk. She was an amazing photographer. These have been sitting in storage for 3 years. Gabrielle's eyes widened. Theodore, I couldn't possibly. Why not? They're not doing anyone any good in a box. My mother would have loved knowing they were being used by someone who appreciated them. But what if I break something? This equipment must be worth thousands of dollars. Then we'll fix it or replace it. Things can be replaced, Gabrielle. Passion can't. Theodore's voice was gentle but firm. Consider it part of your benefits package. Gabrielle picked up the camera with reverent hands, testing its weight and examining its features. This is a professional model. Top of the line. My mother never did anything halfway. Thank you, Gabrielle whispered. This means more than you know. I'm starting to understand that the best gifts aren't things you buy, Theodore said, glancing at Amara's drawing on his wall. They're things you share. The morning passed quickly as they worked together. Gabrielle helped Theodore organize his schedule, but more importantly, she helped him see his daily routine through fresh eyes. When he mentioned eating lunch alone every day, she suggested they eat together in his office. When he complained about feeling disconnected from his employees, she proposed walking through different departments to check in personally. You own this company, Gabrielle pointed out, but when was the last time you really saw what goes on beyond this floor? I get reports, Theodore said defensively. Reports aren't people. People have stories, families, dreams. They're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Around noon, Amara announced she was hungry. Theodore realized he had been so absorbed in conversation that he had forgotten about lunch entirely. What would you like to eat? He asked Amara. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, she said without hesitation. They're my favorite. Theodore looked puzzled. I don't think the executive dining room serves those. I packed our lunch, Gabrielle said, pulling containers from her bag. Simple sandwiches and fruit. I hope that's okay. More than okay, Theodore said, realizing he couldn't remember the last time he had eaten a homemade meal. But I insist on providing lunch from now on. What do you both like? As they shared their simple meal, Theodore found himself laughing more than he had in months. Amara told stories about her classmates with animated gestures, while Gabrielle shared observations about the people she had served at the diner. Their easy conversation filled the office with warmth that all of Theodore's expensive furniture had never provided. Theodore, Amara said suddenly, do you live in a big house all by yourself? Yes, I do. That must be lonely. Our apartment is small, but it's cozy because we're together. Amara's right, Gabrielle said gently. Size doesn't matter if you're alone in it. Theodore nodded slowly. I bought the house when my parents were alive. We used to host dinner parties and holiday celebrations. Now it just echoes. Maybe you need to fill it with people again, Amara suggested with 8-year-old wisdom. Maybe I do, Theodore agreed, looking at his 2 new friends with growing hope. Maybe I really do. By the end of the day, Theodore's office felt completely transformed. Amara's artwork decorated the walls, family photos sat on his desk, and the sound of genuine laughter had replaced years of sterile silence. As Gabrielle and Amara prepared to leave, Theodore felt the familiar pang of loneliness approaching. But this time it was different. This time he knew they would be back tomorrow. Same time in the morning? He asked hopefully. Wouldn't miss it, Gabrielle promised. And as the elevator doors closed behind them, Theodore Bennett smiled at his reflection in the window. For the first time in 1,000 days he was excited about tomorrow. 2 weeks had passed since Gabrielle and Amara began brightening Theodore's days, and the change in his entire building was remarkable. Employees who had once whispered nervously about the reclusive CEO now smiled when they saw him walking the halls with his new assistant and her charming daughter. The executive floor, once as quiet as a library, now echoed with Amara's laughter and Gabrielle's warm voice. On this particular Thursday afternoon, Theodore sat across from Gabrielle in his office, reviewing the day's schedule. Amara was at her usual spot by the window, working on a watercolor painting of the city skyline. The afternoon sun caught the auburn highlights in Gabrielle's hair as she spoke about upcoming meetings. The board wants to discuss the quarterly donations, Gabrielle was saying, and the mayor's office called about the literacy program funding. Theodore nodded absently, but his attention kept drifting to the way Gabrielle unconsciously tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she concentrated. Over the past 2 weeks, he had discovered that she hummed softly while working, always knew exactly how he liked his coffee, and had an uncanny ability to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. More importantly, she had helped him rediscover parts of himself he thought were lost forever. Yesterday she had convinced him to join the company softball team. This morning she had encouraged him to call his estranged college roommate. Small steps, but each one led him further away from the isolated man he had become. Theodore? Gabrielle's voice brought him back to the present. Are you all right? You seem distracted. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. He set down his pen and looked at her directly. Gabrielle, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. She straightened slightly, giving him her full attention. Of course. Are you happy living where you are now? Gabrielle glanced toward Amara, who was absorbed in adding delicate blue strokes to her painting. We're grateful for what we have, she said carefully. That's not what I asked. Gabrielle sighed softly. The apartment is small and the neighborhood isn't great. Amara's school is underfunded, and I worry about her walking to the bus stop alone. But we're managing. What if you didn't have to just manage? What if you could thrive? Before Gabrielle could respond, Theodore stood and walked to his desk drawer. He pulled out a set of keys and a folder of documents. What are those? Gabrielle asked, though something in her voice suggested she was afraid to hope. Keys to a house in Riverside Gardens. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a backyard for Amara to play in, and it's in the best school district in the city. Gabrielle's face went pale. Theodore, what are you saying? I'm saying that I want you and Amara to live somewhere safe and beautiful. I want Amara to go to a school where she can flourish. I want you to stop worrying about making ends meet and start dreaming about the future. I can't accept something like that, Gabrielle whispered, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Why not? Because it's too much. Because I haven't done anything to earn it. Because. She struggled for words. Because people don't just give away houses. Theodore moved to the chair beside her, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Gabrielle, in 2 weeks you've given me more than anyone has in 3 years. You've given me friendship, laughter, purpose. You've brought life back into my world. Amara hugged away 3 years of pain in 30 seconds. How do you put a price on that? But a house, Theodore? That's not a Christmas bonus. That's changing our entire lives. Good. Your lives deserve to be changed. For the better. Amara looked up from her painting, sensing the emotional weight of the conversation. Mommy, why are you crying? Gabrielle wiped her eyes quickly. Happy tears, baby. Sometimes when good things happen we cry because we're so grateful. Did something good happen? Amara asked, setting down her paintbrush. Theodore knelt beside her chair. Amara, how would you like to have your own bedroom? With space for all your art supplies and maybe a desk by the window where you could paint. Amara's eyes grew wide. Really? Our very own house. Your very own house, Theodore confirmed. With a backyard where we could plant a butterfly garden. A butterfly garden? Amara's voice rose to a squeak of excitement. Mommy, did you hear? A butterfly garden just like I always wanted. Gabrielle looked at Theodore with wonder and something deeper that made his heart race. You remembered about the butterfly garden. I remember everything you tell me, he said softly. Both of you. Don't you think everyone deserves someone who remembers the little things that matter? Hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments what small gesture has meant the most to you. Gabrielle stood and walked to the window looking out at the city below. Theodore could see her internal struggle, her pride warring with her desire to give Amara the best possible life. Theodore, she said finally, I need you to understand something. I've been taking care of myself and Amara since she was born. I've never depended on anyone else. Accepting this, it scares me. Why? Because what if you change your mind? What if you decide we're not worth it? What if something happens and we lose everything again? Theodore stood and joined her at the window. Look at me, Gabrielle. She turned, and he saw all her fears and hopes reflected in her eyes. I will never change my mind about you and Amara. You've become the family I didn't know I was looking for. This isn't charity and it's not pity. It's gratitude. It's friendship. It's. He paused, searching for the right words. It's love. The kind of love that wants to give without expecting anything in return. Gabrielle's breath caught. Theodore. I know it's scary to accept help. But sometimes accepting generosity gracefully is its own kind of gift. You're teaching me how to be generous with my heart, not just my wallet. Let me teach you how to receive. Amara appeared beside them, slipping her small hand into Gabrielle's. Mommy, I think we should say yes. The nice man wants to make us happy. Gabrielle looked down at her daughter, then back at Theodore. Slowly she reached for the keys. Yes, she whispered. Yes, we accept your incredible generosity. And thank you. For seeing us, for caring about us, for changing our lives. Theodore felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with business success or financial achievement. This was the warmth of giving with love, of seeing joy bloom on the faces of people who mattered to him. When can we see our new house? Amara asked, bouncing on her toes. How about right now? Theodore suggested. I think it's time I saw it too. As they prepared to leave, Theodore realized that somewhere in the process of giving Gabrielle and Amara a new home, they had given him something infinitely more valuable. A new life. The house in Riverside Gardens was everything Theodore had promised and more. Gabrielle stood in the spacious living room, afternoon sunlight streaming through large windows that looked out onto a tree-lined street where children rode bicycles and neighbors waved to each other. It was the kind of neighborhood she had only seen in movies. Mommy, look. Amara's voice echoed from upstairs. My bedroom has a window seat where I can sit and draw. Theodore watched Gabrielle's face as she took in every detail. The hardwood floors, the updated kitchen with granite countertops, the cozy reading nook built into an alcove near the fireplace. Everything was tastefully furnished but not ostentatious. It felt like a home, not a showpiece. The backyard is perfect for that butterfly garden we discussed, Theodore said, opening the French doors that led to a generous yard with established flower beds and a wooden swing hanging from an old oak tree. Gabrielle stepped outside, breathing deeply. I can't believe this is real. It's real, Theodore assured her, joining her on the brick patio. And it's yours for as long as you want it. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Amara explore the yard with the boundless energy of a child who had never had her own outdoor space. She was already planning where different flowers should go and which corner would be best for butterfly bushes. Theodore, Gabrielle said softly, can I ask you something personal? After everything we've shared, I think we're past worrying about what's too personal. Why are you doing all this? Really? And please don't say it's just gratitude. Theodore leaned against the patio railing, considering his answer carefully. Because for the first time in 3 years I wake up excited about the day ahead. Because Amara's laughter has become my favorite sound in the world. Because when you smile, it feels like the sun coming out after a long winter. Gabrielle's breath caught. Theodore. Because I'm falling in love with your kindness, your strength, your beautiful heart. And because somewhere along the way you and Amara stopped being my employees and became my family. The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Gabrielle turned to face him fully, searching his eyes. You're in love with me? She asked quietly. I think I have been since the day Amara asked why I looked sad. You both saw straight through my walls and loved me anyway. How could I not fall in love with that? Gabrielle was quiet for a long moment, watching Amara chase a butterfly near the flower beds. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I've been trying not to feel what I'm feeling. Telling myself it was just gratitude or that I was confusing kindness with something deeper. And what do you feel? Like I've been holding my breath for 8 years and suddenly I can breathe again. Like maybe, just maybe, fairy tales can come true for ordinary people. She turned to him with tears in her eyes. I'm falling in love with you too, Theodore. With your gentle heart, your lonely smile, your capacity for generosity. With the way you listen to Amara like her thoughts are the most important things in the world. Theodore stepped closer, his heart pounding. Where does that leave us? I don't know. This is all so new, so overwhelming. A month ago, I was serving coffee and struggling to pay rent. Now I'm living in a house I could never afford, working a job that feels like a dream, and falling in love with a man who seems too good to be true. I'm not too good to be true, Theodore said gently. I'm just a man who was lost until 2 angels walked into his office and reminded him what living actually means. Amara came running over, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Theodore, I found the perfect spot for butterfly bushes. Want me to show you? Absolutely, Theodore said, allowing Amara to grab his hand and pull him across the yard. As they walked together, Gabrielle followed a few steps behind, watching the man she was falling in love with listen intently to her daughter's elaborate plans for their garden. This was how it could be, she realized. This easy warmth, this natural fit of their three lives coming together. And over here, Amara was saying, we could put a little bench where you and Mommy could sit and watch the butterflies with me. That sounds perfect, Theodore agreed. We'll need to research which flowers butterflies like best. Can we go to the library tomorrow and get books about gardens? We can go to the bookstore and buy any books you want, Theodore offered. Amara's face lit up. Really? We never got to buy new books before. Mommy always said library books were just as good. Theodore glanced at Gabrielle, seeing the mix of embarrassment and sadness in her expression. Library books are wonderful, he said diplomatically. But it's also nice to have your own books that you can write in and keep forever. Theodore's right, Gabrielle said, joining them near the proposed butterfly garden. Sometimes it's okay to have new things just because they make us happy. They spent another hour exploring the house and yard, with Amara claiming every corner as her new favorite spot. By the time they prepared to leave, twilight was painting the sky in soft purples and pinks. When can we move in? Amara asked as they walked toward Theodore's car. This weekend, Theodore said. I'll have a moving service pack your old apartment and bring everything here. A moving service? Gabrielle shook her head in amazement. I've never had anyone else pack my belongings. Well, now you do, Theodore said simply. As they drove back toward the city, Amara fell asleep in the back seat, tired from all the excitement. In the comfortable darkness of the car, Gabrielle and Theodore talked quietly about practical things like school transfers and utility setups. But underneath the logistics was a deeper conversation about the future they might build together. Theodore, Gabrielle said as they neared her current apartment, I want you to know that whatever happens between us personally, I'm grateful for this chance. You've given Amara opportunities one never could have provided. You've given her something much more valuable than anything I could buy, Theodore replied. You've given her love, values, and the confidence to be exactly who she is. That's priceless. When they stopped in front of Gabrielle's building, Theodore walked them to the door. The contrast between this neighborhood and Riverside Gardens was stark, and Theodore felt a surge of satisfaction knowing they would never have to worry about safety again. Thank you, Gabrielle said, for everything. For the house, for the hope, for helping me believe in happy endings again. Thank you, Theodore replied, for teaching me that the best things in life aren't things at all. They're moments like this. As he watched them disappear into the building, Theodore realized that somewhere in the process of trying to heal his own loneliness, he had found something he never expected. A ready-made family who loved him not for what he could give them, but for who he was becoming with them. And for the first time in 1,000 days, Theodore Bennett drove home with his heart full instead of empty. 3 months had passed since Gabrielle and Amara moved into their new home, and the rhythm of their shared lives had settled into something beautiful and natural. Theodore spent most evenings at the house in Riverside Gardens, helping Amara with homework at the kitchen table while Gabrielle prepared dinner. Weekends were filled with trips to farmers markets, movie nights curled up on the living room sofa, and long walks through the neighborhood where Amara would point out every interesting dog, unusual flower, or promising cloud formation. On this particular Saturday evening in early summer, Theodore sat on the back patio watching Gabrielle and Amara tend to their butterfly garden. The flowers they had planted 3 months earlier were blooming in waves of purple, yellow, and orange. True to their hopes, butterflies had discovered the garden and filled it with fluttering color. Theodore, come see, Amara called out, her voice bright with excitement. The monarchs are back. He joined them among the flower beds, where half a dozen orange and black butterflies danced from bloom to bloom. Amara stood perfectly still, arms outstretched, hoping one might land on her. They're beautiful, Theodore said, slipping his arm around Gabrielle's waist. The gesture had become natural over the past few weeks, as natural as her head resting against his shoulder. Just like someone else I know, he added quietly, pressing a kiss to the top of Gabrielle's head. She smiled up at him, her eyes soft with contentment. Flatterer. Truth-teller, he corrected. Amara had given up trying to attract butterflies and was now documenting their garden in a sketch pad, her tongue poking out in concentration as she attempted to capture the delicate wing patterns. She's gotten so good at drawing, Theodore observed. The art classes you enrolled her in have made such a difference. Though I think her best inspiration comes from having space and peace to create. Theodore watched Amara work, marveling at how much she had bloomed since moving to Riverside Gardens. She was more confident at school, had made several friends in the neighborhood, and seemed to grow more beautiful and intelligent every day. But more than that, she had helped heal something broken in Theodore's heart. Through her innocent wisdom and unconditional affection, she had taught him that love wasn't something to be earned or bargained for. It was something to be freely given and gracefully received. "Gabrielle," Theodore said, taking her hand, "I need to talk to you about something." Something in his tone made her look at him more closely. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect. That's actually what I want to talk about." He led her to the wooden bench they had installed near the butterfly bushes. Amara continued sketching, humming softly to herself, lost in her artistic world. "These past 3 months have been the happiest of my life," Theodore began. "You and Amara have turned my house into a home, my work into joy, my existence into a life worth living. Theodore, you've done the same for us. We've never been so happy, so secure, so loved. That's what I want to talk about. The love part." Theodore reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know this might seem fast to some people, but when you've spent 3 years in emotional winter, you don't waste time when spring finally arrives." Gabrielle's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Gabrielle Washington, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and Amara for the rest of my life? Will you help me be the man I was meant to be?" Tears spilled down Gabrielle's cheeks as she looked at the ring, then at Theodore's hopeful face, then at Amara still peacefully drawing in the fading light. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Are you sure you want to take on a ready-made family? The responsibilities, the complications, the everyday reality of life with an 8-year-old. "I've never been more sure of anything," Theodore said firmly. "Amara isn't a complication, she's a gift. The 3 of us together isn't complicated, it's right. It feels like what I was searching for my whole life without knowing it. But what if?" Theodore gently placed his finger against her lips. "What if we're happy? What if we build something beautiful together? What if love really is enough?" "Mommy, why are you crying?" Amara had noticed their intense conversation and approached with concern. "Happy tears again, baby," Gabrielle managed. "Theodore asked me to marry him," she added, showing Amara the ring. Amara's eyes grew wide. "Does that mean Theodore would be my daddy?" Theodore knelt down to her level. "Only if you want me to be. I would never try to replace anyone in your heart. But I would love to be your bonus dad, your protector, your friend, and your biggest fan for the rest of your life." Amara threw her arms around his neck with typical enthusiasm. "Yes, yes, yes. I always wanted a daddy who would stay." Over Amara's head, Theodore looked at Gabrielle. "Is that a yes from you too?" "Yes," Gabrielle laughed through her tears. "Yes to all of it. To the marriage, to the family, to the beautiful life we're going to build together." Theodore slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled both his girls into his arms. They sat together on the bench as darkness fell around them, planning their small wedding and their large future. "Can I be a flower girl?" Amara asked. "You can be whatever you want to be," Theodore promised. "Can we get married in our butterfly garden?" "If that's what makes you happy," Gabrielle agreed. "Can we have cake shaped like butterflies?" "We can have anything you want," Theodore laughed, realizing that for the rest of his life, making Amara's wishes come true would be one of his greatest joys. Later that evening, after Amara had fallen asleep between them on the sofa during their movie night, Theodore and Gabrielle sat in the kitchen planning their future over cups of tea. "I still can't quite believe this is real," Gabrielle admitted, twisting her new ring around her finger. "What part seems unreal?" "All of it. The house, the job, the love, the proposal. 6 months ago, I was a single mother serving coffee and worrying about rent. Now I'm engaged to the most wonderful man I've ever met, living in a dream house, and watching my daughter thrive in ways I never imagined possible. 6 months ago, I was a lonely billionaire who thought money was the answer to everything. Now I know that the answer was never money. Was you. Was Amara. It was learning how to open my heart again. We've all been transformed, haven't we?" "Completely," Theodore agreed, reaching across the table to take her hand. "And this is just the beginning." As they sat together in their warm kitchen, with Amara sleeping peacefully upstairs in her butterfly-decorated bedroom, Theodore Bennett reflected on the miracle of ordinary love. He had spent years trying to buy happiness, never realizing that it had been waiting for him all along in the form of 2 people who would love him simply for being himself. Tomorrow they would start planning their wedding. Next week they would begin the legal process of Theodore adopting Amara. Next month they would travel to Europe for the honeymoon Gabrielle had never thought she would have. But tonight, they were simply a family sitting around their kitchen table, planning their beautiful future and grateful for the unexpected gift of finding each other. 1 year later, Theodore Bennett stood in his home office, but it looked nothing like the sterile corporate space he had once inhabited. Amara's latest artwork covered one entire wall in a rainbow of creativity. Family photos from their wedding, their European honeymoon, and countless everyday moments filled every surface. Gabrielle's camera equipment occupied the corner where she now pursued photography professionally, having discovered a talent for capturing the authentic emotions of families and children. The morning sun streamed through windows that Amara had decorated with sun catchers that painted dancing rainbows across the walls. Theodore smiled as he heard his wife and daughter laughing in the kitchen, their voices mixing with the sizzle of Saturday morning pancakes. His laptop chimed with an email notification. The Bennett Foundation had just received confirmation that their latest initiative, providing job training and housing assistance for single mothers, had helped its 1,000th family find stable employment and safe homes. Theodore had started the program 6 months after marrying Gabrielle, inspired by his own journey from isolation to belonging. "Daddy, breakfast is ready," Amara called up the stairs. The word, "Daddy," still filled Theodore with wonder every time he heard it. The adoption had been finalized 3 months after their wedding, making their family official in every way that mattered. Theodore closed his laptop and headed downstairs to find Amara setting the table with the careful precision of a 9-year-old who took her responsibilities seriously. She wore a bright green dress that matched the butterfly clips in her hair, and her smile could have powered the entire city. "Good morning, beautiful," Theodore said, kissing Gabrielle's cheek as she flipped the last pancake. "Good morning, handsome," she replied, leaning back against him for a moment. "Amara has big plans for today." "Oh really? What kind of plans?" Amara bounced in her chair with excitement. "The butterfly garden is having a perfect day, and I want to have a tea party outside. And Mrs. Chun from next door said she might bring her granddaughter over to play. And tonight is movie night and I get to pick the movie." "Sounds like a perfect Saturday," Theodore agreed, settling into his chair at the table they had shared countless meals around. "What movie are you thinking about?" "Something with dancing," Amara said decisively. "Because mommy loves to dance but she never gets to anymore." Gabrielle laughed. "I dance with you all the time. But not real dancing. Like at your wedding." Theodore remembered their wedding dance, how nervous Gabrielle had been about dancing in front of people, how beautiful she had looked in her simple ivory dress as they swayed to their favorite song in the butterfly garden surrounded by their closest friends. Mrs. Patterson had served as matron of honor, and several of Theodore's employees had become genuine friends rather than just professional acquaintances. "Maybe we should take dancing lessons," Theodore suggested. "All 3 of us." "Really?" both his girls said in unison, making him laugh. "Really? I think it's time I learned how to do more than just the basic sway and step." After breakfast, they moved to the back patio where Amara had set up her tea party. The butterfly garden was indeed having a perfect day, with dozens of butterflies visiting the flowers that had grown even more abundant over the past year. Theodore had learned the names of every flower and could identify most of the butterfly species that visited their yard. "Daddy, look," Amara whispered, pointing to a magnificent swallowtail that had landed on the edge of her teacup. "He wants to join our party." Theodore watched his daughter's face, radiant with joy and wonder, and felt the familiar surge of gratitude that had become his constant companion. This child, who had seen his sadness and offered a hug, had changed the entire course of his life. "Make a wish," Gabrielle suggested, settling beside them with her camera to capture the magical moment. Amara closed her eyes tight, then opened them as the butterfly flew away. "I wish that we could be this happy forever and ever." "What did you wish for, Daddy?" Theodore looked at his daughter, then at his wife, then at the beautiful life they had built together in this garden, in this house, in this unexpected family that had healed all their hearts. "I don't need to wish for anything," he said honestly. "I already have everything I could ever want." "But everyone has to make a wish when butterflies visit," Amara insisted with the logic only children possessed. Theodore closed his eyes and made his wish silently. When he opened them, Gabrielle was watching him with curious eyes. "Okay, I made one," he said. "What did you wish for?" Gabrielle asked. "That someday we'll have more children to fill this house with even more laughter." Gabrielle's breath caught, and a beautiful blush spread across her cheeks. "Theodore, is that something you'd want too?" "I've been hoping you'd bring it up," she admitted softly. "I've been dreaming about giving Amara a little brother or sister." Amara clapped her hands together. "Really? A baby brother or sister? That would be the best present ever." As the afternoon wore on, neighbors dropped by to visit. Mrs. Chun brought her granddaughter Lucy, who became fast friends with Amara over shared butterfly observations. The Johnsons from across the street stopped to admire the garden and stayed for iced tea. The Garcias brought their new puppy who provided endless entertainment. Theodore marveled at how naturally their home had become a gathering place for the community. Gabrielle's warmth drew people in, while Amara's innocent joy made everyone feel welcome. The house that had once been just an address had become the heart of the neighborhood. That evening, after their movie night featuring a musical that had everyone dancing in the living room, Theodore and Gabrielle sat on their back patio under a sky full of stars. Amara had fallen asleep on the sofa, and Theodore had carried her up to bed, marveling as always at how perfectly she fit in his arms. "Can I tell you something?" Gabrielle said, curled up beside him on the patio swing they had installed last spring. "Anything. Sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and discover this was all a dream. That I'm still in that tiny apartment, still struggling to make ends meet, still worried about Amara's future." Theodore pulled her closer. "What would convince you it's real?" "I don't know. Maybe it's not about convincing myself. Maybe it's about accepting that good things can happen to ordinary people. That fairy tales don't just exist in books. You're not ordinary, Gabrielle. You're extraordinary. You're the woman who saw past my money to my heart. You're the mother who raised a daughter so full of love that she could heal a stranger with one hug. You're the person who taught me that generosity isn't about how much you give, but how much love you put into the giving." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle sounds of their neighborhood settling into evening. A dog barked in the distance. Wind chimes sang softly in the breeze. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing piano. "Theodore," Gabrielle said eventually, "do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't brought Amara to that interview?" "Every day," he admitted. "I think about how I might have spent the rest of my life alone in that office, surrounded by success but empty of joy. How I might never have learned that the best things in life aren't things at all." "What are the best things?" "Saturday morning pancakes with my family. Amara's artwork on my office walls. Your laugh when you think something is genuinely funny. The way you both light up when you see me at the end of a long day. The feeling of being needed not for what I can provide but for who I am." "You know what the most surprising thing has been?" Gabrielle asked. "What?" "How naturally this all happened. How easily we became a family. I expected it to be complicated, awkward, full of adjustments and compromises. Instead it felt like coming home." "Because it was coming home," Theodore said simply. "We were all looking for each other without knowing it." A shooting star streaked across the sky, bright and brief and beautiful. "Make another wish," Gabrielle whispered. Theodore closed his eyes, but instead of wishing for something new, he found himself filled with gratitude for everything he already had. When he opened his eyes, he realized that the man who had once counted days of loneliness now counted moments of joy. The billionaire who had thought money was power now understood that love was the only currency that truly mattered. "What did you wish for?" Gabrielle asked. "The same thing I wish for every night," Theodore said, kissing her forehead. "That tomorrow I'll be worthy of the love you and Amara give me so freely." "You already are," she assured him. "You always were. You just needed to believe it." As they prepared to go inside, Theodore took one last look at their butterfly garden, peaceful in the moonlight. Tomorrow new butterflies would visit. Tomorrow, Amara would create new art and ask new questions and fill their home with new laughter. Tomorrow, he would wake up beside the woman he loved and start another day of the life he had never dared to dream possible. The most beautiful transformations happen when we open our hearts to unexpected love. What small act of kindness changed your life forever? Subscribe and share your story in the comments below. But tonight was perfect exactly as it was. Theodore Bennett, the man who had once been the loneliest billionaire in America, was now the richest man in the world. Not because of his bank account, but because of the two people sleeping peacefully upstairs who had taught him that wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in moments like these. The house settled around them with the gentle sounds of a family at peace. And in the butterfly garden, a single monarch landed on the windowsill, as if keeping watch over the home where three broken hearts had found their way to wholeness. Shocking revelation. As Theodore drifted off to sleep that night, he thought about the journal he had been keeping since the day Amara first hugged him. Page after page documented his transformation from isolation to joy, but the final entry would reveal the truth he had never told anyone. He had been searching adoption websites and single mother support groups for months before posting that job, not looking for an employee, but desperately hoping to find a family who might let him love them. The interview had never been about finding an assistant. It had been about finding home. And when Gabrielle and Amara walked through his door, they had given him exactly what he had been secretly praying for. The chance to be not just a provider but a father, a husband, a man whose heart was finally completely full.